I know. I know. My mother taught me not to wear a hat in the house, and I see you're not either. But as our logo says, a cattleman without his hat can feel a bit naked. So I'll take it off now, and I'll clothe myself properly later. Oh no. Well, good morning. As I stand here today in this place, can I say how very pleased I am to be here in this 40th year of our esteemed organisation. Let me also thank all of you for conquering the great distances of our land and attending our annual event. Thank you all for the warmth and generosity of your welcome. We extend ours to you all. A particular welcome to Todd Wilkinson from the NCBA in the US. The annual NTCA conference is a unifying event. As members of this association, we are in this together. It is a time and place for a glance back over our shoulder at the past, but more importantly, a commitment to the future. This is an occasion for speaking frankly, albeit our opinions should be delivered respectfully on all occasions. And so as we begin this day, a great day, a day of meeting and celebrating and catching up with good friends, a day of sharing our experiences and recounting our wins and losses. We begin this year full of energy and the joy of the challenge and the anticipation of that which we head towards in this new year. And so, Rowan, with that short introduction, the President's address. As I rise today to hand over the reins of this organisation that I have proudly overseen over the past 3 years to a new President, I can take the time to contemplate how just 3 short years ago, in this same place, to the day, I was voted into the NTCA presidency. I guess, like many newly minted presidents, I only thought I knew what I was in for. My hair was much less grey then. However, I was determined not to let these boyish good looks and my simple youthful charm deceive people into thinking that we as an association are naive or less than up to the task when it comes to defending this organisation's members. And in fact, my newly minted executive team and a brand new CEO and I were committed and dedicated, energised and eager, in fact on the bit to get on with the business of the NTCA. What a time it has been. We have enjoyed the wins and gains and advancements we have made, not enjoyed the frustrations and lack of common sense we sometimes face. And I have even somewhat learnt to bite my tongue, somewhat. So today I speak for the last time as a representative of you good people, our members, you who work the land, are of the land, whose very lives sprang from this land and whose bones will be returned to it when your time is done. Again, I will use this platform to speak of the many things that affect us as an industry, to directly, openly and honestly discuss the views of the industry and further the rights of the pastoralist, the cattlemen and women, the mums and dads and families that populate our stations, our homes, our businesses, to protect our animals and our way of life. Truth now appears to have become an entity of rarity. But most frighteningly, and of such striking importance as to give us all pause, is the effect of the diminishment of the meaning of words and the honesty they speak. This loss has reduced truthfulness to such a point as to not just allow the mincing and dicing of fact, but has gloried in the celebration of its destruction. Direct talking and honest discourse are no longer a matter of pride and principle, but of scorn and subjugation. Even in the media, are we to accept and mourn the passing of a balanced view? Are we to accept that journalists will run their own agenda and not the truth? Are we to accept that in some instances they will even run the lies of politicians and interest groups in order to curry favour? The press is there to serve the governed, not the government. Our society today is being asked a question. Why tell the truth when it takes far less talent to lie convincingly, often and without pause? All of the issues I speak of today would benefit from a more honest and direct discourse from those we engage with. Now, I am yet to be accused of not speaking my mind directly, of the truth as I see it. And I know many in our industry hold the same value. And in today's society, I see this as critical. Too many people are now subdued into speaking mistruths or not speaking directly out of fear of giving offence and the backlash that comes with it. Today, I don't offer offence, but you are free to take it. And until I got a Twitter account, I thought Backlash was an 80s rock band. So what of that glance back over our shoulder at our past? Given that we are here celebrating 40 years of the NTCA, it is hard to know where we are going if we do not know where we have come from. The NTCA was formed in April 1984 when the three peak bodies that came together under the Northern Territory Cattlemen's Council officially amalgamated with Cattlemen's Union to form a single unified organisation to represent the cattle producers of the NT. The NTCA was born. Within 1 year of its establishment, the NTCA was representing 117 full members, accounting for over 1 million head of cattle. Today, the NTCA is the peak primary industry body for NT pastoralists, representing 90% of the Territory's pastoral industry, ranging from small family operations and Indigenous-owned enterprises to large corporate organisations. I was reminded of the words of the first executive director of the NTCA, Mr. Cliff Emerson, who sadly passed last year, who remarked that with the coming together of the separate bodies to form the NTCA, the cattlemen of the North now held a greater power. At the announcement of the formation of the NTCA, Mr. Emerson reflected on this potential. He said, "Power is a curious word and has many implications behind it. The size of the organisation is not everything. It is the fact that all cattlemen are speaking together. That is where the power is." See, Sue, size isn't everything. It is a remarkable reflection upon the character of the people of this time to put aside their differences, their egos, and have the foresight to see what was needed and make it happen. This character has been carried forward in the organisation since that time and created a can-do culture of which we can be and are extremely proud. Since that time, there have been 14 presidents of the NTCA that have given of their time voluntarily, a role that is equal parts difficult and demanding, fulfilling and frustrating, humbling and heartbreaking, yet for me, at all times rewarding. Today, the pastoral industry in the NT has an investment of many billions of dollars. Our industry generates over $750 million directly and more than $1 billion indirectly to the NT economy. In doing this, we directly and indirectly provide employment for thousands of people who have helped grow our territory for over 150 years. Collectively, this is a huge business, one in which clear-thinking people may believe that governments, both state and federal, may want to engage with. A business where all governments would want to sit down and listen to the collective wisdom of the 150-year-old pastoral industry and act on their concerns. The NTCA has always had a respected voice, one in which we punch well above our weight. But I must say, on our most important issues, our business with Canberra is getting increasingly difficult. The voting public, that's you and me, want a federal government to listen and act. We certainly have politicians that engage who don't listen. We have politicians that engage, listen and don't act. We even have those that act without engaging and listening. But imagine a government that will engage, listen and act in the interests of those that put the government in their esteemed position. The government cannot be some wild dictatorial organisation that gets to tell hard-working Australians what they can and will do with their lives. We cannot stomach nor allow the vast bureaucracies to run industry like some plaything for the elite. They don't get to shut a trade down due to their sensibilities being hurt, or because some activist is triggered and feels offended, or at least they shouldn't. It's time to change this idea that government can oppress industry on a whim. The days of government overreach must end. I have spent considerable time trying to prosecute this idea, and I have found our industry is not alone. The resources, energy, fishing, transportation, manufacturing, banking, mining, retail, and countless other industries feel the same way. It appears that if you are sitting in your lounge room in your pyjamas, working from home for one of the vast federal government bureaucracies, then yours is the only view that counts. In my opinion, the most important thing that any government can do is to build a sense of trust, a sense of integrity, a sense of honesty, and a sense of commitment to the Australian people. The Australian people have seen their fundamental commitment, their fundamental trust in the value of commitments given by their leaders slowly erode. It is so important for the future of our country that a sense of trust and confidence in the words given and commitments made by political leaders can be rebuilt. To do this, we the people need to be respected by our elected governments, and if not given, then demanded. As president of the NTCA for the last 3 years, I feel our industry is being disrespected, unappreciated, and seen as unimportant by this current federal government, a government that appears hell-bent on depressing rural Australia. This federal government doesn't like farmers. How do we have patience for people that live off the product of our land but clearly can't stand the people who live on it? The hypocrisy is tangible. Farmers are individuals. They do not follow in the footsteps of government. This government prefers that people rely on them for everything and distrusts those who refuse to. Clear, independent, common sense thinking is a worry to this government that appears to be run by militant unions and green activists that continually panders to the left and is deeply embedded in identity politics. Our industry looks for support, not sabotage, help, not hindrance, respect, not restriction. But we know this is too often not the case. You have to look no further than the ongoing disrespect paid to us and our industry than the live export cattle class action. After losing the live cattle class action and being ordered by the court to pay the claimants, the federal Labor government, after much procrastination, in 2023 offered $215 million clear of costs and clear of interest to settle the claim. There are 215 claimants in this class, and by the time the costs are taken out and the interest paid, the remainder wouldn't buy a cup of tea and corned meat sandwiches for the stock camp. This offer was a slap in the face, a disrespectful waving of the government's hand to us to go away. Of course, we could not accept this offer, and after much debate, industry bravely made a generously low counter-offer. Not one that was made lightly or easily, but genuinely. An offer of $510 million plus costs and plus interest was made back to government. Genuinely attempting to close the action, genuinely trying to limit the cost to Australian taxpayers, and genuinely trying to give the industry and those who suffered unimaginable loss the closure they deserve. The real cost of this action is arguably in excess of $1.2 billion. Industry lawyers received the required letter on or about January the 16th this year that simply stated the offer wasn't accepted. No reason given, no by your leave, no beg your pardon, nothing. Zip. Nada. In fact, before we received the letter, it was leaked from the Attorney General's office to the media. We read of the government's decision in the paper. What disrespect. No dialogue, no discussion, just playing politics. The disrespect paid to our industry by this government is reprehensible. So let me be clear. This whole sad and tragic episode is politically motivated. This federal Labor government does not think enough of this industry and by extension, you, to even explain itself. These are the actions of a government hell-bent on punishing the rural sector, maybe punishing those who didn't vote for them, will not vote for them, punishing those who don't believe the lies of this government and refuse to surrender to their cruel actions both past and present. Anthony Albanese lied when elected in saying that no matter how you voted, the government he led would respect all of the people every day. Well, he was lying then, and he continues to lie about this case to this day. The actions of this government on this issue are about power and about votes. It is a sordid, grubby little business. I am in a position to continue the fight for the rights of the people caught up in this monstrous incompetence perpetrated by the Labor government in 2011. Remember, the same people who were in power in 2011 that forced the ban are largely the same people in federal cabinet today, led by Albanese, Burke, Shorten, Wong, Bowen, just to name a few, and now with the addition of the activist agricultural advisor, Guy Laris. My old sparring partner, Minister Murray Watt, wasn't, but he is the Agriculture Minister, and we expect him to stick up for the industry he represents. But he has not. He has joined the dark side. I told him that if you lay down with these dogs, you will arise with their fleas. People on the land, cattlemen, are a resilient people, hardened and forged by climate and conditions. If government expects us to wither and cave in, then guess again. I can tell you with absolute certainty, our resolve has never been firmer. We are not frightened. We are not weakened, but we are angry. You know what? I've been talking about this for too long. I'm going to go off script here. I've asked for, no, I've demanded that this action be brought to an end, time and time again. The last time was just sitting across the desk with the minister, one-on-one privately. I demanded he meet with us across the table. How long is this going to go on? I remember the day, we all do, when the decision came down. I remember everything about it. I remember where I was, I remember what I was doing, and I remember who I was doing it with. The relief, the happiness, the vindication, but the effort, the pain, the toll it took, it was worth it. But it's still not done, and I'm bloody angry about it. Yesterday, government lawyers asked for a further 9-month delay. Again, more delay. It's not the cattlemen delaying this case. Too many of our friends have gone to their graves waiting for this compensation, and this is compensation. This is money that was stolen from our industry, from our businesses, and from our families. This is not a reward for being right. It's justice for being wrong. Despite the harm the government is inflicting on us, we're up for this fight. We will continue this fight. We will get the justice the court has ordered. The live sheep export ban is also an example of extreme prejudice by a government on one section of an industry. There is no election mandate to close this trade as stated by Murray Watt. This is a fallacy. In fact, with just over 30% of the primary vote, how do you have a mandate for anything? This is once again an entirely unnecessary measure designed only to placate the sensibilities of inner city elites in Sydney and Melbourne. Previous National Farmers Federation President Fiona Simpson summed it up well when she said, "This policy has nothing to do with animal welfare. It's about Canberra trying to win back Green votes on the East Coast at the expense of jobs and livelihoods in WA." The expected ban on the live sheep trade is a disgraceful action brought about by a government who are the same people that caused the grief in 2011. What have they learnt? The decision is not based on science or even economics. This disgraceful decision is based on a backroom promise to the activist organisation that this government panders to. But just like environmental activism is not so much about protecting the environment, animal activism is not really about protecting animals. It's about promoting an agenda that appeals to voters in the inner city federal electorates, and this federal government should know better. Our country has been through a great debate in the past 12 months. I spoke about the referendum last year, and I cannot address you all today about the year that was without mentioning it. I understood the desire for a voice to Parliament. I did. And if only the leaders of the Indigenous movement had put aside race and embraced us as a friend. If Anthony Albanese had not been so arrogant, so ignorant, so threatening, and so wrong. Instead of an Indigenous voice to Parliament, shouldn't our voice from the regions be enough? From the lands that yield our country's wealth, with an opportunity to see the result of that wealth put back to the regions, instead of the drip feed we are on now. Regardless of your view on the result, the people of Australia have spoken. The record books will make note of it, and time will reveal the wisdom of the decision to go to a referendum and dissect the intricacies of the campaigns run by both sides. But I would like to take this opportunity to make note of something separate to the battlefield of the campaign. That being the role played by two Northern Territory politicians during it. Two leaders from the NT were central to the entirety of the campaigns, albeit on opposing sides of the debate. Senators Malarndirri McCarthy and Senator Jacinta Price spoke on behalf of their chosen constituents and on behalf of their own beliefs, and did so with conviction and courage. Again, I say the result is what it is, regardless of anyone's personal views on the matter, regardless of how you voted. Recognising the quality and strength of leadership on either side of the battlefield is the first step in healing the wounds of what was a highly charged debate. Having been president of the NTCA, I can tell you all that taking a bold position in public on behalf of those whom you represent can be personally hard. Knowing that you will face criticism, even anger for doing so, weighs heavily over your head. Fighting for what you believe in with pen and voice can be just as confronting as doing so with your fists. The damage is different, but damage all the same. The nation has spoken and the campaign's ended, but it fills me with great pride as a now past president of the NTCA, but more so as a Territorian, to see the conviction of Northern Territory politicians to reshape this country for the better, even if their views may differ on how to do so. It brings me hope for the future that we possess individuals of such character. It shows that while our representation in Canberra may be small, the quality of leaders we produce should be the envy of every state in the country. So to Senators McCarthy and Price, we say this: well done. The nation will remember you. The Territory will remember you, and the Northern Territory Cattlemen's Association will as well. The pastoral industry has always admired those of vision and conviction. You both are welcomed amongst our ranks and on our lands and at our dinner tables. But to both of them, I say this, that your work is not over. That is because the rumblings of treaty are alive today here in the Northern Territory. In March 2019, the NT government established an office of the Treaty Commission. The Treaty Commissioner, Tony McAvoy SC, is a Brisbane-born Indigenous barrister who currently resides in Sydney. The Commissioner, consulting solely with Indigenous people, produced a draft report and a discussion paper in March 2020, and then in June 2022 handed down the 180-page final report. Now, I know it's 180 pages because I've read it. You should read it. And don't do it on an empty stomach. It's fair to say that many Territorians are not aware of this or not been paying any particular attention to these developments. For the large part, People thought a treaty was only going to affect Indigenous people, but awareness of treaty and its impacts came crashing through to us during the Voice referendum. The Treaty Commission final report makes seismic-like recommendations that will result in a massive transfer of economic, legal and social power impacting the lives of every Territorian. The treaty report proposes to establish 4 new Indigenous control bureaucracies and 1 additional NT government agency. These 5 bureaucracies include a First Nations self-government. Now, I don't have the time to go through all this now, but too many secret meetings are happening, and honesty and openness appear to have been replaced with a smokescreen of uncertainty. The optimistic among us may have thought that lessons would have been learnt from the failed Voice campaign. Instead, the failure of the Yes campaign in the referendum has driven the discussion around treaty almost underground, and that is not the place for this to happen. It will sow the seeds of doubt, of conspiracy, and fuel the flame of division once again. There is no plan by government for any broad consultation with ordinary Territorians on this matter, but we are referred to in the report as colonial settlers. A policy which is founded on the idea of separating people on racial or ethnic criteria is totally unacceptable. That idea was voted down in the referendum of 2023 by a vast majority. And who is going to fund this? Well, for those struggling to answer that question, the answer is us, the taxpayer. And it includes the transfer of Commonwealth and Northern Territory assets, including interests in pastoral leases, into a land bank. Never mind if you've been on your land for 1 year or 150 years. How can justice that happens in dark places truly be justice? How can kindness lied about truly be an act of character? And how will political solutions to problems within communities truly bring about change? When have they ever? I fear we may now be entering a period of sedition, where politicians elected to act in the best interests of all Territorians are now facilitating the undermining of the rights and interests of those same Territorians. The idea that politicians would advance the cause of one race of people in Australia over all others based on race is preposterous. But it is happening right before our very eyes. You can be government funded whilst taking a university class on treaty, but only Indigenous people can get the funding. Our natural, inalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government. The freedom to operate your business has never been so fragile. The attitude is to take from the pastoralist and give it to someone else. There are countless stories in this audience, in this very room, where an encounter with government ends with them altering your position negatively, or even affecting your asset, taking away the rights to work your land, or in fact, taking it from you, not allowing you the quiet enjoyment to operate it as the Act decrees. What does it mean where you hold the rights to your property, your land, if the government holds the power of life or death over that business, your property, through its multi-layered bureaucracy? It is easy to give something you don't own to someone else who hasn't earned it. So with that said, I stand and urge the NTCA to commit to the policy that we must have on this matter. And I urge the incoming executive and our CEO to question government strongly on this in the days leading up to our next election. The NTCA must reject the formation of another government within the NT with powers over the NT landmass and where membership is based on race. Last year, Anthony Albanese led a race-based policy to a referendum. It cost the country, you, me, all of us, in excess of $450 million. We were told it would be based on 3 stages: the Voice, treaty and truth-telling. This was roundly and comprehensively voted down. There is no mandate for treaty. It has not been requested by the Australian people, and there has been no vote for it. And if anything, the Australian people, in my opinion, would believe they actually voted it down as part of last year's determination. It beggars belief that Labor state governments would continue to force this beaten issue against the will of the people, against the will of the majority of the people, and to continue the division based on race. Seriously, who is pushing this? Why are they pushing this? What is their agenda? Really? Will, do you know why this is happening? No. Well, I don't know why it is happening, and we are the two in this room who should know why it is happening. As I have always taught my children, the umpire has decided, so it is time to abide by the umpire's decision. I know I am an optimist, but I believe Australians absolutely respect the right to a fair go for all, irrespective of colour, background, race or belief. I believe that these attitudes have made Australia one of the fairest, diverse and most tolerant of societies in the world today. But this optimism about the reconciliation process cannot be blind optimism. We must understand that just symbolic gestures and empty promises are a threat to reconciliation. These things will never be as important as health, housing, education, employment, and good old-fashioned family values. Nor will the process of reconciliation work in Australia if one of the key drivers becomes the establishment of different systems of accountability, governance and law based on race. Nor will reconciliation work if further organisations are set up to continue the siphoning off of taxpayer funds with little to no accountability. If resources that are directed towards Aboriginal people who are disadvantaged never get to the people to be used well and efficiently, why do we keep continuing to do it? If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. Any reconciliation process must involve and inspire all of us Australians. While native title legislation has since proved to have challenges, and in all honesty, it is difficult to see to what benefit it has been, in the majority of instances today, pastoralists enter into claims honourably and with hope. At the last determination hearing in the NT last year, a decision handed down not far from where we stand today, the community made special mention of the pastoralists, who attended the day as guests, in the spirit of friendship. I would seek to remind the leaders of the current treaty campaigns that we live amongst the communities, that we often share our food and fuel and medical supplies with them, that we are so often their first call for assistance and the first to lend a hand. To continue to whisper in dark corners about the true intentions of these proposals while presenting an outward face to the world of kindness and understanding is wrong, and will be what these disingenuous leaders will be remembered for. Certainly, one of the things that NTCA is remembered for is the leadership shown by the Young Indigenous Ringers training program. Through a number of programs, we have successfully given a start to more than 200 young Indigenous people trained into the workforce on our stations. Last year, I stood before you all and committed the NTCA to ensuring the return of an Indigenous employment program. I can assure you the demand for it is still there. We still receive calls from kids and community members asking how they can sign up and when it will be back in place. Last year, I made a commitment that we will not give up on these kids. While others may decide that funding can be better spent elsewhere, we know what works and what doesn't, and we know how to reach these kids and give them the pride in themselves and a shot at a better future than they have known. I can assure you all that this remains an area of work for the association. While we have been working feverishly to have a deal in place that I would be able to announce to you all here and now, unfortunately, that is not the case. However, I can assure you all that we are close and that an announcement will be forthcoming. Following my address last year, management had a number of government officials and agencies contact them to express shock that the program had lost funding and offered assistance in finding new government support for it. At the time of speaking here today, we have unanimous support for the program from all federal politicians who represent the NT, the unanimous support of the NT government and any number of important people based further south. Who would deny the effectiveness of a program proven over such a period of time? Well, let me tell you who would. It's because we, the NTCA, are not an Indigenous organisation. Full stop, point blank. Is that seriously the position of our government? Is it seriously something we should accept? Something is wrong in the halls of power when the Northern Territory pastoral industry, which proudly has Indigenous participants, Indigenous station owners, Indigenous communities on our doorsteps and schools that our children share, is prevented from helping with what is a problem that seems to be getting rapidly worse. There are several managers and owners here in this room today who are even able to communicate with communities in their own languages, languages that are not written down anywhere and spoken by too few. I doubt there are many non-Indigenous people in Canberra today who could lay claim to such a feat, and yet they feel comfortable weighing and measuring us and determining our worth. As I have said before, the NTCA does not ask your race, colour or gender when you fill out an application to join our association. What matters to us, to me, to you, is the commitment you hold to your land, your animals and your people. So why then do some continue to divide us into Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Australians? Why can't we all just be Australians? Dividing us on race is racist. Last year, I told you all that we would fund this program without the support of those Indigenous agencies. I told you that we would find a way, and this remains our commitment. This year, 2024, in the Northern Territory, is an election year. And whilst all government elections are important, I think this may be the most important election we as Territorians have encountered in our lifetimes. This is a year when Territorians need to decide who will take the NT into the uncertain future and build a stronger, better territory for its residents. Who will actually govern for all Territorians? It is now time to ask the single irrefutable question that must be answered by the people of the Northern Territory. Who is better able to lead our territory over the next 4 years into difficult, challenging and uncertain times? In answering this question, we the people must determine what the incumbent government has done and what it has not done for the last 8 years. We must determine who is better able to lead this territory during the economically tough and strategically testing times ahead. We must make a judgment on the plans and hopes and aspirations that each party has for the future of the Northern Territory. This ought not to be daunting. The Territory has the untapped potential to be an economic and regional powerhouse. Which government will help us achieve our goals? Which political party will unshackle the North finally, develop the regions, and has the foresight, the goals and the plans to best deliver? It's our choice. So let me tell you my thoughts. It is time for brave government. We need a party and ministers that can make brave decisions, who can identify the problem, consult on the solution, implement policy and stick to it. But also be brave enough to admit the solution hasn't worked and change it if that is what is required. It is time to once again govern for the people. It is time for government to quit funding the activists that in turn then use those very funds to stymie and block government with their false environmental claims. We have seen this solid backhander delivered to the Environmental Defender's Office by Federal Court Judge Justice Natalie Charlesworth in the case the EDO brought against Santos's Barossa pipeline, just a mere $5.8 billion development project. The Justice ruled the EDO relied on contradictory and made-up evidence, and that evidence of coaching Indigenous witnesses had occurred. Well, bravo, Judge. Finally, some would say. Environmental Minister Tanya Plibersek told the EDO that they were naughty and shouldn't be naughty if they were going to accept so much government funding. But opposition leader Peter Dutton hit the mark when he said he would strip the radical organisation of all government funding. I speak of this because this is exactly what is happening in the NT. a well-known activist organisation bending the truth, poaching and weaponising Indigenous organisations and land councils against economic development in the NT. Our latest iteration of Chief Minister, Eva Lawler, appears to have come out strongly in favour of developing the NT and backing industry. But we need brave decisions. Defund these activists that rally against government with government's own taxpayer funds. What is really concerning is that land councils, presumably staffed with sophisticated law advice, would appear to have allowed themselves to be used in this way. Why is it that they appear in actions alongside these environmental groups? We need brave government to take back our towns from the lawlessness that is being waged upon its citizens daily. I nearly choked on my double-shot lemon-twisted soy latte the other day when I saw Labor MP Marion Scrimshaw quoted in the 23rd of February NT News as saying, "Authorities need to stop pussyfooting around on juvenile crime, and the policies of the NT government aren't working, and that there needs to be a rethink of how we deal with this youth crime. A bit of tough love never hurt anybody." Really? Well, Miss Scrimshaw has just had her home broken into while she slept in it, and this can tend to focus one's mind. Who would have thought it? A federal Labor MP downloading on the weak policies of her state Labor colleagues. Unfortunately, it sounds a bit like it's been okay that a score of homes and businesses belonging to everybody else has been vandalised, breached and burgled, but now that it's happened to me, you fellas better fix this. The soft Labor Party policies on crime and the weak judiciary is largely what's caused this. Chief Minister Lawler has stated, "Let's not forget the history of Australia was built on us being colonised by a detention facility from England. So we have had young people in trouble with the law for the whole history of Australia." Hang on a minute. Let's speak honestly about this for once. The main group of people perpetrating these criminal actions have been in Australia for 60,000 years. The English didn't send them here. They are the product of failed policy and a soft-on-crime attitude. Imagine declaring that because we were once a penal colony, that we can expect this sort of crime to continue. If government allow the grog back into communities against the advice of the elders, raise the age of criminal responsibility, and then set up a turnstile to quickly get the offenders back on the streets to offend again, and the judiciary continue to soft sentence, then what do you think was going to happen? Because more empty political promises that don't end this litany of lawlessness is not what the territory needs. How are we to develop our businesses and attract rural suppliers and services to our towns? I think it is fair to say that despite the efforts of the Northern Territory Police Force and the efforts of those in law and order, there is an overwhelming vulnerability that people feel in relation to personal injury, home invasion and theft, in the sense that we in the NT are just not as safe as we once were a generation ago, even a decade ago. This matter of bringing the lawlessness to account will take a brave government with brave policies, not the usual bleeding heart, soft-on-crime policies that have fed this situation and allowed it to grow. But there is no denying the facts as laid out in front of us. The government, the NT Labor Party, has failed its citizen on the issue of crime. But wait a minute. Does the CLP have a plan to change the situation? No, really. Can the CLP, hand on heart, say they have policies that will actually change this situation? We've got serious problems and we need serious people to fix these problems. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted, it belongs to the brave. We need a brave government. We deserve a brave government. At this election this year, I encourage you all to look to the people who show the most courage, character and conviction and support them with your vote because the territory needs it. A growing pastoral industry is a growing territory. As I stated earlier, I believe in brave governments and brave actions. During my term as president, the NTCA executive has undertaken several tough projects on behalf of the membership for the good of the organisation. Because of this can-do attitude, our staff are no longer crammed into the one small room to carry out their tasks whilst leaning into each other's workspace. Due to the sale of the Buffalo Court office for a generous amount and the purchase of a new modern office at Cullen Bay that will continue to appreciate in value, they now have not only the space to get on with our association's business, but an area for growth as well, and an office that they want to be at, work at, to achieve great things at. Now that slide there is a picture of the sea view from the new office from Will's window. We have been fortunate to have Life member Mrs. Terry Underwood for helping with the archiving and educating the staff on the enormous resource available within our own records. Thank you, Mrs. Underwood. This new office has been purposefully chosen to offer a great facility for our members to utilise when in town on business and to engage with staff. Oh, that's the view outside of Romy's window. Well, it's still an ocean view. After careful consultation with our members, we have also taken the decision to step away from the operations of the bonding yards here in Alice Springs. This has been done in a way that ensures members can still access the facility, but with the added advantage of the reduction of the risk to the association that was needed to be put in place. Certainly a decision not taken lightly by the executive, one of courage and foresight, and something I hope will be looked back on favourably by future members and staff alike. I congratulate the executive team for the tough decisions made and the courage to follow through. I also thank them for their support, guidance and commitment throughout my term. During my time at the helm, we've had court cases, COVID restrictions and vaccination mandates, live export suspensions, bushfires, biosecurity alerts, floods, federal elections, a referendum, 2 federal agricultural ministers, 3 chief ministers, 4 NT agricultural ministers, and a litany of issues big and small. But the one constant is that there is only one NTCA, one voice for the pastoralists, one voice that represents you all. While sitting at the table and preventing poor decisions from being made is less glamorous than taking on the big public fights that draw so much attention, I can assure you that the private battles are no less important and far more numerous. We may not have won every fight, but we have had a real crack, and our opponents are often left licking the cuts and scratches of the confrontation. Being a member of the NTCA is great. But what is really great is getting involved. Attend the meetings, share your voice, your views, your experience, become part of the executive and help good people make a difference. This industry needs you. I wish to say how very proud I am of the staff of this association. In my opinion, this may well be the best qualified and most competent staff as a collective that I have been associated with during my time in the NTCA. The business end of the NTCA is incredibly complex and complicated. The ability to keep abreast of all the issues takes an enormous amount of work. The NTCA staff are multi-skilled and the association is incredibly fortunate. One of the staff even flew Will and I from Brunette Downs to Alice Springs. Will was a little nervous. Okay, he was terrified. We are very fortunate to have such a mix of skills, experience and dedication. I commend Will, Romy and Dan on their leadership and on the members' behalf thank this highly competent team for their continued dedication to our association. Of course, I personally especially want to thank Will and Romy for their help and guidance through the past 3 years, as well as those past presidents that I have called on for their advice. Once again, I wish to thank my employer, Mr. Alan Myers of the Tipperary Group, for his investment in the NTCA and allowing his employee the time off from his business to give attention to my duties as NTCA President. Lastly, but most importantly, I thank Sue, my main supporter and valued critic, for her support and for her counsel when asked, and sometimes when not asked. Sue has a deep knowledge and love for the Northern Territory and an ability to keep one centred and one's feet firmly on the ground. Finally, as I stand here as your latest past president, let me congratulate incoming President Henry Burke and the new executive team on their continuing attention on the NTCA's business of looking after the Northern Territory's cattlemen. Henry has a deep love for the NTCA, and I believe he will serve its members well. We have great challenges, but also great opportunities. We have great challenges, but also great people to meet those challenges. We have great challenges, but also a great industry that's worth fighting for.